Hi, everybody. Let me just get the Q&A thing going here. Should be working now. And welcome, everybody. So just a few quick updates. You may notice now that my name is no longer Fasting Work Girl. I know I changed kind of like how artists change throughout the course of their careers, but I'm now going by the Fasting Doctor, as you've noticed, and in the process of just kind of rebranding. Oh, hi, Anuka, I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it, but just said, hi, just followed you from Nigeria. Thank you for following. I'm glad to have you as a follower. But you guys have noticed the website's changing. The Facebook group name has changed to the Fasting Doctor. So everything is getting slowly moved over to the Fasting Doctor. But if you still see posts under Fasting Work Girl, you'll know that that was some of my stuff before switching. Other thing I'm excited about tonight is that I have reached 5,000 followers. Yay! So, thank you to everyone who's following along. I'll probably make a post about that in the morning, but hopefully my page is adding value and you guys are finding it educational, because it's just nice, I think, for people to have knowledge kind of at their fingertips and to prompt you to start doing more research on your own, but kind of knowing where to start. So yay! So tonight we're going to do a Q&A. As always, I give my lovely little disclaimer, and even though I'm a physician, I'm not your physician. So what we discuss on here is not directed at anyone personally, but it's for informational purposes only. You should always consult your own healthcare provider before undertaking any sort of medical or lifestyle change. All right, so with that, you guys go ahead and submit your questions. And I'm gonna go ahead and take some of the Q&As that were submitted earlier in the stories. And we'll, talk as long as people have questions. And when we finish up, we will stop. All right, so first question says, how do you eat? Any special requirements? So no, to fasting, the nice thing about with intermittent fasting is that it really works with any lifestyle, any way of eating. You do not have to follow a particular diet or nutritional plan. I will say I think that you'll get better results with intermittent fasting if you're following a whole foods diet, meaning that your nutrition majority comes from either foods that are not in a package, so whether that's grown fresh, raised fresh, whatever that means for you. Just the fewer things in general for everyone that we can consume that are not in packages, that's going to be the most beneficial for your health. So a lot of people will get into kind of debates about what's the best way to live. Is it plant-based? Is it keto-based? Is it low carb? Is it carnivore? Is it Mediterranean? Is it DASH? There's like a million different ones to discuss. But at the core of all of these nutritional plans is the fact that they're eating real whole foods. So for me personally, I tend to prefer a more low carb lifestyle, but with me being low carbs, I still eat plenty of plants, and I prioritize vegetables over fruit and treat my fruit as a dessert. That's what works well for me. That may or may not work well for everyone else, but I find that that's very sustainable for me, and I'm, not craving food all of the time, and that's what works for me. So that's the long answer. The short answer is you don't necessarily have to change or follow a special diet with intermittent fasting. Just in general, tips would be that when you are actually fasting, make sure that you are consuming only either water, that's the best, tea, if it's plain tea that you're brewing yourself. So don't go and buy whoever's iced tea out of a bottle. Again, remember, we're making things for ourselves. So plain tea, no additives, no sugar substitutes, just plain. And coffee, just plain, just black. And there's a question about that later, and we'll get into more detail. I love bone broth, but save your bone broth and count that as part of your eating window. A lot of times people consume things because they think it doesn't have any calories in it during their fast, like diet pop, etc. And that's just going to derail you. So that is what I would say. There's a comment about clean fast is my only hard rule. I mean, I think honestly, that's probably going to get you the best results. I try to stick with water as often as possible during my fasting window. Doesn't mean I don't have other things, but more often than not, my fasts are water only. And that's what seems to work best for me. Looking along down those lines, what about CBD or the tea black? During your fasting window? So, oh, I see. It doesn't say or tea. It says or THC tea. So I'll admit, I don't really know how CBD or THC tea will affect fasting. I would probably say don't use it during your fasting window, right? So, and obviously you're going to check your state and local laws to make sure you can use it where you're at, because I don't think we can use it in Kansas. But I would just personally, I would stick with water first. Then, if you're doing tea, like plain herbal tea, that's not going to give an insulin response, and then plain black coffee. That's what I would stick with as much as possible during my fasting window. Do I ever have times where I may add a splash of milk or splash of heavy cream to my coffee? Yes, right? Because I'm human. So of course I don't always have a clean fast, but the majority of the time, and when I say majority, I mean 5 to 6 out of days a week, my fasts are going to be clean. So that works for me. And positivity boy mama, me too, I have 2 boys, is Canadian. Okay, so you may have a little more leeway than what I do down here, but south of the border compared to where you're at. But yeah, I would just say I would tend to save most things to my actual eating window, and maybe replace your tea with, if you were drinking pop or things like that. And you may notice a benefit there. So, right, let's see. Okay, so let me go on to the next question that was pre-submitted. This kind of leads into what I was talking about before, but we want to delve into a little more detail. So this says, what are your thoughts on what is acceptable to have during fasting? MCT, fats, and electrolytes. So this is a wonderful question, one that is asked probably most commonly all the time. So let's first start with MCT oil, and different people have different opinions on this. I'm just gonna say at the core, I'm a no additives girl. Like I don't think that I need to take special supplements unless I'm specifically supplementing a thing that I'm deficient in. So if in fasting forward, was that on my last comment? Depends on the objective. That's true. So we're going to go with weight loss right now. So we'll preface that, right? Depends on what you're trying to do with your fast. That's a good point. But I don't like MCT oil. So this is why, not for other benefits. If you are, trying to get into a deeper state of ketosis because you have epilepsy or things like that. But if we're talking about just for weight loss, the thing I see with a lot of people who are doing keto is that they overdo it on the fats, additives, or MCT oil. So the thing is, if you're using, if the whole premise of being low carb, right, is to use your fat for fuel, if your body has another source of fat accessible that allows your body not to have to break down your own fat, then it's going to break down whatever else you're adding first before you get at your stored fat. And for a lot of people, not everyone doing keto, and so that's why fasting forward's point is valid. It depends what your purpose for the fast is and for adding MCT and fats to your diet. But if the premise is weight loss, then I would rather you burn your own fat than the fats in MCT oil or doing fat bombs or things like that. So to answer that question is that for me personally, during my fasting time, I don't use MCT oil. When I first started fasting, because I've obviously evolved over time, right? I've been doing this now since 2017. So I'm learning as I go and have perfected different things. And I used to add coconut oil to my coffee. I would blend it. I would make the bulletproof coffee, yada, yada, yada. And I stopped that after about, 4 to 6 months. One, because for me, I don't think it made the coffee taste better. And two, I started looking into it more and I was like, I'm probably burning this fat before I burn my oil. So I cut it off and went completely clean. I didn't notice a difference in concentration levels using extra fat in my coffee versus when I just do a clean fast, because if I'm in ketosis, then I'm pretty laser focused. When I'm not in ketosis, I'm not as laser focused, and I've noticed that about myself. So, I think if you're at goal weight, whatever that is for you, to me, I just define goal weight less as a physical trait and more at the weight that makes you metabolically healthy, so you're not having to take medications, etc. Then feel free to add in MCT oil and different things like that. You just got to be careful. You don't need to overdo it, but realize your body is burning its own fuel and producing many of those things. So I personally would save your money and let your body do it, but everyone to each their own. Now, the last part of that question is electrolytes. So electrolytes during a fast are important. Now, I will say for people doing fasting of like 18 hours or less, you're likely not going to get into too much trouble with electrolyte balance. Like, our bodies are not that fragile. If every time we went without food, for 16 hours, our bodies were in a dangerous state of hyponatremia and magnesia levels or whatever, we probably wouldn't be around now. So I don't necessarily worry about electrolytes. I'll be honest, like, I don't add electrolytes to my fast if I'm doing a 16 or 18 hour fast, because like my kidneys got me. And unless you have a medical condition, your kidneys probably have you too. So that isn't needed, in my opinion, again. But for people doing extended fasts, then yes, you have to pay attention to electrolytes. Some people suggest that still 24 to 36 hours, you're probably not getting into too much trouble with electrolytes. However, some people complain of symptoms like headache and magnesium. Sometimes, especially magnesium supplements, can help with that feeling. A lot of people use Himalayan pink salt. Sometimes that'll curb hunger. So I have no problems with electrolytes. And let me be clear, if you want to add pink Himalayan salt or electrolytes, as long as they're not like some fruity electrolyte or something. So, I mean, you're pretty much just adding like the salt and magnesium or whatever to your water, to your tongue, even if you're fasting less than 18 hours. I don't think it's going to hurt you. Just difference is, do you need it or does it just make you feel better? And if it makes you feel better, I mean, to each their own. Some people throw pink salt on their tongue to curb hunger. So, I mean, you can do all sorts of stuff with it. So, in short, I personally don't use the MCT oil and fats to supplement my fast, but electrolytes, depending on what type of fast I'm doing or whatnot, are definitely, open game for me. All right. Next question was, and then I'm going to scroll back through the comments too, but I'm just getting through the pre-submitted questions. What do you use to get over the mental hump of hunger while fasting? You know, intermittent fasting is a muscle. So sometimes, I'll be honest, there's really nothing I can get over and I'll break my fast because I'm human, right? And I can always adjust my fasting window the next day if that happens. First things I usually do though is if I'm feeling really hungry, but I don't want to break my fast and I'm not sure if it's true hunger or if it's boredom or whatever, I'll break from the clean water fast and I'll do water with lemon. And I don't know, for me, it's something about water with lemon. That really helps me. Other things that I'll do, even though it's not a clean fast, if I have bone broth around, and again, I'll sometimes take like a little sip of that and see if it calms me down. And then I'll go back about my day, staying busy and then also trying to work out will kind of help me get over the mental hump of hunger. But if my hunger starts to be accompanied by more symptoms than just hunger, then I'm especially likely to break, because my belief is that while you're fasting, you should feel well. And if you're not feeling well during your fast, then that might be a symptom of something else that your body's actually telling you should break the fast. So if it's just hunger, I have a whole bunch of things I try. Even headache, slight headache, I'll, do a little salt. I'll get hydrated. A lot of times I'm dehydrated. It's very easy to get dehydrated while fasting, just because as your insulin levels decrease, that acts as a natural diuretic. Also the same reason why people will notice when they go low carb or start keto that you'll lose like a lot of water weight at first, which that's not a bad thing, but you need to stay hydrated. It all has to do with decreasing insulin levels, and lower insulin levels serve as a natural diuretic effect to the kidneys, meaning that you'll pee a lot. So, yeah, but that's what I do to try to do hunger. And sometimes it doesn't work and you eat and that's fine. All right. And this one says, this one's from the hubby, and he says, love the name change on IG. What made you decide to change it? Aw, thank you. I think he was just trying to make sure I had some questions for tonight. Thank you for the support, MJG. So what made me decide to change the name change? Just briefly, when I started my Instagram account, it was more just for my personal accountability for weight loss. And I was looking for more people in the fasting space, profiles or low carb, things of that nature. And so I just had it, for my own personal use. Once I learned more about fasting and then actually saw the changes it was making in my life, that led me to also obtain a board certification in obesity medicine. And once I learned more about different mechanisms for weight loss and then continued my study of intermittent fasting, and now actually have a preconception weight loss clinic with a special interest in patients with PCOS, I just thought it was a nice natural evolution. So that's kind of why I decided to change my name, just become a little more official on the gram. So, all right. Let's scroll back through questions because there were a lot. And I'm going to see if I can get to them all. Okay, let me see here. So one user said, I suffer from postprandial somnolence. And I'm scoring any advice on this. So I'm assuming you mean like after you eat, you kind of like have the itis, is what we call it in the States. I know you said you're from Nigeria, so I don't know if you guys refer to it as the itis, but when I say the itis, it's basically you eat a big meal and then you get really tired afterwards. I would say, so I don't have any like scientific advice on this. So these are just kind of my personal opinions, things you could try. And if it's really debilitating, I would definitely bring it up with your care provider. But what are you eating? That's what I would wonder first. I always point back to nutrition. because I feel like symptoms that come with food or after meals is maybe more of a symptom of the fuel that you're using for your body, which could be corrected with nutrition. So I don't know if your meals tend to be heavy in processed foods, like high sugar content. So again, I don't mind the sugar from the plants because there's only so much broccoli you can eat. But if you're having highly processed meals, I would first see if you can decrease the sugar intake from processed foods, artificial ingredients, and see if that changes anything. That's what I would wonder. I kind of already addressed fasting forwards, opinion where it says depends on the objective. Again, yes. So when I'm referring to fasting, my default is talking about weight loss. But if you have any other questions of fasting and other things, then yes, definitely shoot those out. So, okay, I'm scrolling through. So one Sussy 31 says, does taking medication break your fast? So, there's not going to be any scientific study that says you've broken your fast because you've taken X, Y, or Z. So if you have a medication that there's no issue taking it on a empty stomach, and so to find out whether or not you can take medications on an empty stomach, again, you gotta consult the person who's prescribing the medications for you, because there are some medications you can take on an empty stomach and some that you cannot. Also, depending on how long you're fasting, some medications, especially blood pressure medications, particularly diuretics, if you are already urinating a lot because you're on a medication that's designed to make you urinate, and then you drop your insulin levels and you urinate more, again, there's the risk of dehydration. So I don't think it's an issue of whether or not the medications break your fast. The question for your provider is whether or not you can take these medications, on an empty stomach, like for example, insulin, not really wanting to take insulin on an empty stomach without some sort of adjustment. So, meaning without eating, because it's gonna, risk hypoglycemia, very low blood sugar. So, I don't worry about medications breaking your fast. If they were prescribed, they're prescribed for a reason. However, they may need dose adjustment. And so you need to really discuss that with your care provider. And then there are some medications, for instance, ibuprofen, NSAIDs, which should not be taken on an empty stomach. And I'm not trying to give anyone advice, but that's just, that's on the bottle. And that's because it can lead to GI bleeding. So that's one that I'm always concerned about fasters taking, because sometimes you'll get that hangry headache in the first 24 hours of your fast. And I'll hear people talking about, I take ibuprofen all during my fast and it helps. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you are just waiting to create a stomach ulcer. You're going to create a stomach ulcer. So that's like my really big warning. But for the rest, it's individualized. You got to talk to your provider. So Dare to Be Fit with Nicole says, I use I'm assuming MCT oil only when I train for my competition because I was taking in very low fat. Yeah, that's, again, back to fasting forwards comment. I don't necessarily have any problem with the concept of using MCT oil, fat, etc., depending on what your goal is. I'm just specifically speaking towards fasting, because I see a lot of people out there market, like, you got to take this oil, you got to have bulletproof coffee, during your fast, or you're not going to lose weight. And that's not true. So yeah, but if you use it for other reasons, there's lots of different reasons to use it outside of that. Fasting Forward says, thoughts on extended fast going beyond 72 hours. I think it just depends on what the purpose is and what you're trying to do with it. So Jason Fung, for those who are not familiar with him, is the author of the Obesity Code. You also have Jimmy Moore. Jimmy Moore actually on Instagram is currently doing a 7-day fast. So you can go to his profile to see why he's doing that and his experiences regarding that. But, for most people, if it's for weight loss, I find that if you're also changing your diet at the same time, you don't necessarily need to do extended fast beyond 72 hours. Now, extended fasting beyond 72 hours, if you're treating a specific condition, may have some benefits. There have been some studies looking into cancer research in terms of fasting immediately prior to chemotherapy, and then for anywhere from 24 to 48 hours after chemotherapy. So if you add the time before chemo and then after chemo, they're probably around 72 or plus hours in some of these studies. And it actually, there's some prelim data suggesting that it makes the normal host cells, like your own cells, more resistant to the effects of chemotherapy, and people notice less side effects. There are some people who have done it for attempts and trials of improving autoimmune disease, things of that nature. So there definitely may be applications for it, but you don't necessarily need to do a 72-hour fast. If you are doing a fast before that, that's definitely when I would make sure that you check in with your provider and just make sure you don't have any medical conditions that may place strain on your body. Most people, like I said, handle 48-hour fast fine. The body is very resilient. But once you're getting over that, you have to think about what your conditions are and is it really worth the risk benefit. For those doing it for autophagy, again, autophagy, for those who may be unfamiliar, and we'll do a session, I think, a talk just on autophagy, because it's very long, very complex, and we still won't even be able to get through all the mechanisms of it in one chat. I mean, people win Nobel Prizes for studying that, so we're not going to touch everything in 30 minutes. But for those who are unfamiliar with autophagy, it is the process of cell cycling, breaking down old proteins, especially damaged proteins, to prevent their accumulation of damaged proteins without adequate recycling has been linked to a host of chronic diseases, decline in cognitive function, etc., decreased longevity. And so the thought is if you can upregulate autophagy, you can increase not only cognitive ability and reduce chronic disease in the future, but you can also extend longevity. So baseline autophagy is going on all the time. It's a matter of we don't necessarily upregulate it enough anymore because we're always in a fed state. There is something called mTOR, which is the mechanistic target of rapamycin, which basically is a nutrient sensor. So it is activated by protein and suppressed in times of low protein or low caloric intake, like with fasting. Suppressing mTOR is what we want to upregulate autophagy, because when mTOR levels are high, that blocks increased amounts of autophagy. And again, remember, autophagy is what we want to recycle cells and clean out house so we can build healthy new cells. So that's a very brief description. I mean, there's mTOR1, mTOR2, there's AMPK, there's like other things going on with autophagy, but that's just brief summary. So you can start to upregulate autophagy at anywhere 16 hours plus. So there used to be, I think when I first joined the fasting community, I used to see a lot of people talk about autophagy only happens if you can do a 5-day extended fast. So that's not true. And so you could do shorter fast a few times a year and get that same benefit from that extended fast one time a year. Also, we don't know how much extended fasting is beneficial, because remember, when our ancestors were fasting, that's because they were looking for their next hunt, or, the warm season was over and their crop was scarce. So they were doing it for very deliberate purposes at certain times of the year. We don't know that it's actually beneficial for you, and especially in terms of like your HPA axis, stress hormones and things like that. We don't know that you should be doing extended fast beyond 3, 5-7 days regularly once a month, right? I mean, so people employing seasonal fasts, if you check out Ketogenic Girl or some other people, you'll see that they do an extended fast maybe like 3 or 4 times a year. There are other people who will do an extended fast during Lent, during Ramadan. You know, specific times in a year is probably all that you need to like actually clean house. And then if you are doing baseline fasting, you know, again, 16 hours daily, most days of the week, then you're also accumulating those effects. So that was a very long answer, but hopefully that made sense. Let's see. Sorry, Collard Greens Collective put really question mark, but unfortunately I don't know what you were putting a question mark to. So Lady Keto 541, I usually get back cramps. Not sure what that is in reference to. Like every time you fast, you get back cramps. You may want to get that checked out. I've not heard of people getting back cramps. Doesn't mean it can't happen, but if it's significant, just make sure it's not something more serious. Let's see. Oh, thank you, Fasting for duty calls, and they have to log off, but they will catch my next live. I'm so glad you could tune in. I love your page. Let me see. PhD Mom said, any thoughts on using supplements while doing keto? Again, my thing is like, what are you supplementing? I think the keto industry is no different than any other industry. You know, from fitness trainers or Beachbody. I mean, I love Beachbody workouts, not their nutrition plan. But for, you know, saying, you know, you have to buy our supplements to get results and blah, 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 blah. Like the premise of being low carb or keto is using your own fat for fuel. So you don't need any other fuel to tell your body to burn its fat. If your glucose is low at baseline, you're active and or adding intermittent fasting. So if you have something specific that you're trying to supplement for, you know, by all means do it. But if you are otherwise not having any nutrient deficiencies that you know of, I don't personally think supplements are necessary. But again, if you have a specific deficiency in which you're trying to supplement for, then yes. In the past, I've been iron deficient, so I, you know, increased my iron intake in my food, but I also took iron supplements, you know, something very specific. But again, those are things. In general, I don't think you need supplements to do keto, though. I think if you're eating whole real foods, you're going to be getting most of what you need. But that's just my opinion. Michelle Reed says she has issues with indigestion after her first meal. So I don't know. Oh, okay. Here, she clarified it. I need to keep reading. She says, after a 16-hour fast. You know, I've heard people say that. I have a friend actually who after a 16-hour fast, she said she would get like sharp stabbing pains after she ate. So, I don't hear this too commonly, but I've heard it. My first question is, what are you breaking your first meal with? So even though I tend to be more low carb, when I break my fast, especially if it's like a 24-hour fast, I find for myself, I break best if I use like fermented foods, and I'm gonna have to make a IG video about this. My cousin Samantha and my brother's best friend at Confessions of a Server have both been getting on me saying I need to make some IGTV videos. So whenever I find time in the day to do that, I will. But I make my own fermented foods, and so I believe like the seeding of the good gut bacteria just helps prepare my body to get ready to have a fuller meal. So I typically will find a fermented food, usually that I've made myself, and I'll eat that, and then I'll wait about 30 minutes to an hour, and then I'll have a meal. But my meal is a low-fat meal. And I found for me that just works the best. So that, I really don't have any indigestion with doing that. So you could always try that approach. You know, obviously that's assuming you don't have a medical condition. If you continue to have indigestion though, you may want to bring that up to your provider, especially if you're noticing other symptoms with it. So that's what I would say. And worst case scenario, if you notice it at 16 hours and, you know, they determine there's nothing wrong with you, you know, then maybe do a 14-hour fast or do a 12-hour fast. Like, there's still benefits with consistency of doing shorter fasts. You just need to pay greater attention to your nutrition. All right. Let me see. Sorry, I know I'm like all up in the camera, but I'm trying to see if anybody else asked any questions. PhD mom said, makes sense, thank you. Okay, and I think I got to the bottom, and I was trying to keep it at 30 minutes because my mom said when you talk more than 30 minutes, people stop listening. Love you, Mom. So we're like at 36 minutes, not too bad. So, hey guys, thank you. We had a really good turnout for the Q&A. Again, I want to do something for the 5,000 followers I have. I know some people have 100,000, but I'm very happy and appreciative of my 5,000. And let me know if there are topics you guys want to hear in the future. Just shoot me a DM. I don't always respond to DMs just because, I mean, just, you know, I'm a practicing clinical physician. So, but I definitely read them all, even if I don't respond. So if you have topics you'd like to hear, I will work on them over the next several months and get them up on the blog and probably make posts about them. Great, guys. I will see you later. We're still working on our PEDS series, so I've reached out to a few people, and I'm hoping we're going to have a topic, fingers crossed, but I'm hoping we're going to have a topic soon about adolescents, teens, body image, and how you can encourage a healthy lifestyle without making your teen subconscious. So I think that will be a great topic to have, especially since it's probably more difficult to be a teen now than ever before. So, all right, guys, have a good night. Bye.